Red Sox fans have longed to hear it. The Boston Red Sox are world champions. Game over, series over, and the Red Sox are world champs again. And so are these fans. It hasn't happened at Fenway Park for 95 years. The Red Sox are world champions.
Boston organization has been well run for a long time now. From the top on down, here comes a 1-2 pitch. Red Sox win the World Series. 5-1 the final tonight. And the best team in baseball wins it all in 2018.
The Red Sox have won the World Championship. The Boston Red Sox beat the Los Angeles Dodgers 5-1. They win the World Series 4-1. And the Red Sox become the first team in the 21st century with 4 World Championships. Can you believe it?
Welcome to another episode of the Pesky Podcast. I am the Ritt, and with me is our head writer, Mr. George Sutherland. George, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Not much. Doing well. Just it's Friday. Not much to say more than that. Just kind of waiting for baseball to begin tonight. So
I sit there and can't wait. It's been a long week. But gentlemen, let's start the second half.
The 18th.
And our second half is looking a little early on, not bad. Then all of a sudden, the next couple of games, we're getting a little stretched out, and it's going to test us a lot.
Yep.
So these next 4 series coming up will make or break if we will be buyers or sellers at the trade deadline. But let's talk about tonight's series. Let's talk about the Chicago Cubs. And I don't know the Cubs that well, but I went out and got a guy that did. And we're going to bring him right on. We're going to bring on Crawly. Crawly is the podcast host of Fly the W. So, Crawly, how you doing, man? Thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it. Tell everybody a little bit about you.
Yeah, my name's Crawly. We do the Fly the W podcast here in Chicago for the Cubs for 670 The Score. I am a season ticket holder. I'll be going to the game tonight, hopefully weather permitting. And then I actually gave Miguel Montero his World Series ring. So I was one of 20 guys and gals that got to go on the field and present a ring. And, so absolutely live, breathe, and die by the Cubbies.
Oh, man. See, now that's what I love. Like, I love someone that is just as passionate about their team as we are. And I can tell 100% that you are. So the Red Sox Cubs series coming up, 3 games we got Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And we're going to look at the pitching matchups first.
Yeah, absolutely. And just so you know, this is a Friday night game. They only have one of these a year. So this is they don't do Friday night games. And so this is a rarity. So hopefully, like I said, weather permitting.
Yeah. Game 1 tonight. We're throwing our ace, our newfound ace, Brian Bayo. You guys got Hendricks. And every year in fantasy baseball draft, people laugh at me. Every year I draft Hendricks because I need that complete game, that shutout. And he's good. He's good for the past couple seasons to get at least one.
Yeah, he had a game. What was it this year? He almost had a no-hitter going, I think, against San Francisco. Kyle Hendricks, hard to believe, is the last active player from the 2016 Cubs World Series championship. So the last of the Mohicans there. He actually got shut down last year in June and didn't come back, I want to say, until late May. So he's always been very durable. Something wasn't right last year, and he's worked his way back. And it's interesting because he kind of had a little bit of a hard time adapting to the pitch clock. And so what he kind of got a little bit frustrated. And so what he said is, look, he had never used PitchCon as well. So he said, you know what? I'll call my own pitches. I'll call my own game. And that's what he does. He's the one pressing the buttons. The catcher's the one just kind of, okay, let's go. And then they've been pairing Kyle a lot with a very interesting young prospect that the Cubs, I don't know if they're going to do it tonight, but they've done it for most of Kyle's starts since he's been back. And that is Miguel Amaya. Miguel Amaya was in the Futures game for the Cubs. He was the heir apparent to Wilson Contreras. And then he just got, 2 years of injuries. He had COVID season, so he hadn't played in like 3 years. And then this year he's kind of come out of nowhere. And so, it's an interesting pairing, the veteran with the young catcher. But like I said, it's Kyle who's calling his game. And it's been, ever since that Kyle kind of took over that, you've seen a really big difference. And so, with Kyle, he's going to be one of those guys that he's not what he was in 2016, 2017. Obviously, he's a little bit older now. But he's still going to give you 6-7 innings. He'll give you a quality start most time out. So he'll give up maybe 1-2 runs. The last game against the Yankees, he gave up 4 runs, but you guys know well enough. One of those was those unicorn home runs. It's only a home run at Yankee Stadium in that short porch. So it's kind of like it would have been a quality start if it wasn't for that cheap home run. But, he's come back and he's been everything the Cubs needed. Right now in his career, he's a really solid 3-4 starter.
Yeah. Now, I'm kind of curious because you mentioned the pitcher-catcher relationship. Would that sit there in your mind? You have the veteran pitcher calling his own pitches. Would that be a benefit to the catcher to learn how to call a game better on the major league level?
So with Miguel, a lot of people like throwing to him. He's a really good receiver. People were shocked that the Cubs didn't re-sign Wilson Contreras. But the problem with Wilson is he wasn't a really good receiver. He's kind of ham-handed behind the mound. And especially when you talk about a guy like Kyle, you need to steal a couple strikes because he lives on those edges. Mm-hmm. And so the Cubs went very much with guys that were really good framers, really good receivers. You guys had Christian Vasquez in the past. You had David Ross, our manager at one time. Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about. Right. Yeah. And so the Cubs went out and they got Yan Gomes and they got Tucker Barnhart, 2 really well-respected catchers in that department. I think that, from other pitchers that I've talked to in the minor leagues, everybody loves throwing to Miguel. And I think this is an opportunity for Miguel to kind of learn from the other side from a really strong veteran pitcher who knows what he wants to do.
Yeah. So Hendricks, I'm looking at the stats, and you got Bayo 3.04, Hendricks 3.04. So, tonight something's got to give right there. George, let's talk about the ace, Brian Bayo, coming off of hot starts.
Yeah. In Boston, he's kind of been referred to lately as Pedro Jr., and for good reason. He will remind you a lot of Pedro in his delivery, and he has a nasty changeup. Okay, he makes batters look foolish with that thing, and he'll throw it at any time, any count for a strike. He's been a pleasant surprise. He came out of the gate a little rough, but over the last probably 8 or 9 starts, he's been he's just been a stud, and his presence and his demeanor on the mound have reflected what he's done in the field. So when he comes off the mound after he's had a particularly good performance, he's pumped up, ready to rock and roll, and when he enters the dugout. So, he's maturing in front of our eyes. He is right now the ace of the staff. Okay. And his presence, his ability to just take control of the game is phenomenal for a young man his age. He's done it. And he worked with Pedro in the off season. So I'm sure some of that has rubbed off. And Pedro, I'm sure he picks up the phone every night and talks to him and says, okay, you did this, you did that. And, but he looks like Pedro. He throws like Pedro. And, I don't want to say he's going to be Pedro, but he's about as consistent as you can get for a young pitcher. And it's really just a lot of fun to watch him play.
Yeah. Completely opposite pitching matchup here. Bayo will come at you.
Yep.
Here's my fastball. Here's my changeup. If you can hit it, go ahead. If you can't,
Yeah.
I got you. Kyle, on the other hand, you said he likes to paint the corners. So, game one pitching matchup is going to be really fun. Both bullpens are well rested. So it's going to be an overall fun matchup for game one.
Absolutely.
Game two, we've got Big Maple on the mound for us. And you guys got Stroman.
Yeah, so Marcus has been the story of the season right now. He started out with the World Baseball Classic, pitched really well for Team Puerto Rico. He's bicultural, so last time he did the World Baseball Classic, he did it for Team USA. This time he did Puerto Rico, and he was really the ace of the staff for most of the season. He didn't get a lot of run support early on. Otherwise, those win totals might be up even 2 or 3 more games than what he has right now. With Stroh, ground ball pitcher, which is perfect for A, Wrigley Field, because you don't want to allow a guy with too many fly balls, and B, the way that the Cubs have constructed their lineup this year, which is a focus on run prevention and especially infield defense. And so in that regard, he was doing really good. But then we had that London series where the Cubs and Cardinals went to London, and he had a blister on his finger, and he only went, I think, like 3 innings. And so in his last few starts, it hasn't been as Stroman-esque as we were used to the entire season. So that's kind of been the issue. He struggled a little bit against Milwaukee, Cleveland, and then that St. Louis series. So he decided, he was named to the All-Star team, and he decided because Cubs finished the first half at Yankee Stadium in the Bronx. He decided rather than go from the Bronx to Seattle, across the country, back to Chicago, he said, you know what, man, I'm just going to relax. I've been doing a lot. Like I said, started off with the World Baseball Classic, been a horse for us, went to the London series. And I think it was a smart move to just kind of recharge the batteries and get ready for the second half.
Yeah. One thing, Crawly, I want to get your opinion. The London series. Okay, we were there to play the Yankees a couple years ago. Does the plane ride, the fatigue, does that kind of like set a team back a little bit? Coming back over. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's tough because it all depends. I would say that it affects some guys more than others. It was just tough because the Cubs were doing really, really, really well. And you just don't like to disrupt the rhythm of something like that. So I think when the Cubs went over to London, they had their best stretch of the entire year. They had won like 9 out of their last 10. And then they split in London. And when they came back, they really struggled against the Phillies. But I can't say if it was really – really bizarre. We had those Canadian wildfires down here. So the very first series back, I don't know if they were jet lagged. There were questions about whether they're going to play a couple of the games because of the air quality. So, the Cubs had this awesome stretch right before London. And when they came back, they had an awful stretch. So, it's been, I'm sure some people don't like it, but it's part of the game that we're trying to grow the game globally. And so I don't have any problems with it. I just wish it would have come. Think about the Red Sox, right? You guys were rolling and then the All-Star break comes. You want to keep playing every day. You're like, we're doing great, man. And all of a sudden, oh no, we don't want to stop playing. It was kind of like the same thing.
Yeah. It's, I kind of hope personally, they continue to grow the game of baseball. We got London. They had a series in Mexico.
Tokyo.
They did Tokyo. Next year, it was released some spring training. They're going down to the Dominican Republic. Like, I like how we're going to expand it a little bit. I kind of hope we get to venture up to maybe Canada for somebody other than the Blue Jays.
Right. And I would say that they're also doing next year Seoul, South Korea. So that's going to be exciting. So I think that in that regard of growing the game, you want to do that. You want to go to these places. My only thing is I think they're doing the Seoul, Korea, South Korea. I think that's one of the first series of the year. I would prefer that they do it like that, where you can maybe even start the season 2 or 3 games before the rest of the league, and then kind of
what the Red Sox did a few years back when they started in Tokyo.
Right. Just do it then, or do it right at the All-Star break, where guys can come back and get a little bit of rest. That would be my only fix for that for those global games.
Yeah. So, but going over to Paxton, Big Maple, George, he's been cruising since he came back. He was my personally the biggest surprise so far.
Yeah. He beginning when the season started, he wasn't ready to go, and I think everybody in Boston thought, okay, he's just collecting money. He's not going to be able to go when he comes back. He's not going to be what he was. His first outing, he set the league on notice. I'm back, and he's consistently looked like he's turned the clock back to like when he was in Seattle. Fastball in the 96 to 98. Throwing it hard, throwing it strikes, not messing around. And I think for this team that was important because right as he started to crest upward, Sale got hurt again, so he kind of took over that the mantle of being the wise old veteran, up on the mound, and he's embraced it. And I think in many respects it's probably helped Bayo as well. So he's fearless out there. He's a big man. He's throwing strikes. And the team is playing behind him. He's had a couple of games where they didn't give him much run support, but boy, he'll go out there and give you 6, 7, sometimes 8, right? Strong innings, and you can't ask much for that. He's been after Bayo, he's been the man.
Yeah, looking at the ERAs, Paxton, he came in a little bit later in the season, a 2.73. Stroman's got a 2.96.
Yeah.
But Stroman, like you said, at the beginning of the season, he was in beast mode, and now. Quick question, Crawly: do you think that Stroman could be on the trade block by the trade deadline?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you talked about with your team, these next 2 weeks are going to play crucial, and they're going to have to make decisions, and they're not going to be easy ones.
Yeah, these both teams, this pitcher matchup could be possible. Neither pitcher could be here after the trade deadline. I don't want to see Paxton go because Paxton's been so consistent. But if he can sit there and be a nice loaner piece and get a couple prospects in return, I won't be too upset, but I'll be a little upset.
Right. It's hard because, obviously if you want an ace type pitcher, it's either A, going to cost you a lot of money, or B, you got to hit somewhere in your system. And so, those guys aren't easy to replace. We're not talking about a first baseman or something here. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so if the Cubs were to get rid of Stroh, well, then, that's going to really, really hurt their rotation.
Yeah. And then I'll go ahead, George.
I said the thing with us is that Paxton is making $4 million this year. I mean, that's just like ridiculous money, and he is just going out there and he's just loading up on the in the money bags coming in for the next contract, and just hasn't missed a beat. So yeah, I mean, it's found money for us. This is like Christmas morning every time he goes up on the mound.
Yeah, I always looked at it as for what we paid for Paxton, what we paid for Kluber, we got about an average of $7 million for one good pitcher, and that's not bad in the majors.
Now, why did you have to bring up Kluber?
Well, you gotta take the good with the bad because maybe you can package those two together.
Yeah.
So, but Sunday we're throwing out Cutter Crawford, and you guys have a lefty.
Yeah, that is Justin Steele. He had just finished his first All-Star game. He appeared in the 5th inning, and it's a great story. This is a kid that the Cubs drafted out of high school. It's the first time ever that they had a left-handed homegrown All-Star in the All-Star team. So, Justin Steele, I've gotten to meet him and interview him. He is an absolutely awesome kid. He's from a small town, Lucedale, Mississippi. And, he throws about 2 pitches. The fastball has a lot of different action to it. He does a lot of things with his fastball, but he has absolutely been an all-star this year, and kind of a little Boston connection. David Ross, like I said, is the Cubs manager. Another famous big lefty that played for both of our teams, John Lester, called and gave some tips to David Ross to pass on to Steele, and since last about June or July, he's been one of the best pitchers in all of baseball. And so he's not on a lot of people's radar, but he's a bulldog on the mound, similar to Lester, shows a lot of emotion. He's a fun kid to watch play. So, this has been really second half last year was his breakout, but this has really been the year where he's been recognized. It took him 9 years. He was drafted in 2014. And so, he had Tommy John, and then there's the COVID year, and then it wasn't an easy ride for a man, but there's no one that's hungrier to try to do as well as he can. And him and Stroman have I think the whole staff has a really good connection, the pitching staff, but they feed off each other, Stroman and Steele. They kind of really pump each other up.
Yeah, you have somebody as young as Steele on your rotation with guys, veterans like Stroman and Hendricks. Like, who else would you rather learn from? You know what I mean? Then you got John Lester calling.
Yeah.
Like, you got David Ross sitting there. Used to catch all these amazing pitchers from the Red Sox days. It's like, dude, like, he has one heck of a support system, and his ERA and his win-loss record definitely shows it, that the lineup kind of like rallies around when he's on the mound.
You take a look at, and I'm sure a lot of your followers are fans of Pitching Ninja. Pitching Ninja yesterday dropped a tweet that that Justin Steele is the most underrated pitcher in baseball, and I would 100% agree with that statement.
Man. So, Cutter Crawford, George.
Cutter Crawford is a work in progress. He initially was the number 5 guy in the rotation at the beginning of the year. He was put back in the bullpen. He and Josh Winkowski were a nice two-headed monster in long relief. Did a really good job. Given some of the injuries and things like that, Cutter's come back and he's had to be in the rotation again. He's been a little up and down, but when he's on, he gives you a pretty strong 5. Every once in a while, he'll lose it in the 3rd and the 4th inning for some reason. 4 or 5 batters, he'll go and lose it a little bit, but he seems to be getting past that a little bit more. He's getting the 5. I think it's soon to be 6. He's not going to wow you with anything, but he's going to throw strikes, and sometimes that gets him in trouble. But like Bayo, we'll throw to contact, and you know what? I'd rather have that than trying to go out there and whiff everybody and you miss, and the next thing you know, it's deposited 75 rows back in the stands. But no, he is what he is. He's a number 5 or a good long relief option for us. But he's done the job, and he's been. I think the word here would be serviceable for us.
Yeah. When Cutter's on the mound, it kind of is like, man, he relies on his defense, and as long as it's not up the middle, we have some overall solid defense. Verdugo and Duran out in the outfield. Masa's not too shabby over there with the monster. Devers over the past 2 years has improved his defense immensely.
Right.
And it's just that up the middle, when a certain somebody plays shortstop, that it looks a little shady. So, Cubs, if you're listening, if he's playing shortstop, just hit the ball to him. You're. So, but let's talk about the lineup a little bit. The Cubs lineup looks a little different than years past. Crawly, let's go over the lineup a little bit.
Yeah, the Cubs made a bunch of free agent moves in the offseason. They finally, they took a couple of years where they weren't spending a lot of money, and then this year they kind of did. So when you talk about it, they did add Dansby Swanson. Now, you're not going to see Dansby Swanson possibly Sunday. That's the first day he can come back off the 10-day IL. He had a heel contusion trying to beat out a double play. So, like I told you with Marcus Stroman, the defense is the key here, and that's what they built things around. Now, they also signed 2 first basemen, Trey Mancini and Eric Hosmer. You guys know Hosmer, but Hosmer was DFA'd. He was given his walk-in papers. It didn't really work out. So, Mancini's not that great at first base. He's kind of a butcher. I didn't know he was as bad as he was because I wasn't watching a lot of Orioles baseball, to be 100% honest with you. Right. But up the middle, we have Nico Horner, who really another underrated guy. The fact that he wasn't in the top 10 for All-Star for second baseman was ridiculous. But Nico is actually sliding over to short for the first 2 games of this series. And so with Nico, he's a guy that he's just a really good, again, another homegrown talent. And he was awesome at shortstop last year. He was one of the best defensive shortstops in baseball. And then he went over to second. So up the middle, we're solid. The trouble we have is first and third. Those are the positions right now that, obviously since we lost Chris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo, just hasn't been replaced. And when you talk either offensively or defensively, the Cubs are just in bad, just struggling with that at first and third. So normally when you see the Cubs line up, this year has a lot of 1-year deals and stuff like that. But in the outfield from left to right, Ian Happ has taken a real step back. He was an all-star last year, a Gold Glover, both offensively and defensively. He's it's been a tough first half. He did get an extension this year, a 3-year extension, right kind of when the season started, early April. And it just, I don't know, hasn't played out that great. Now, the Cubs picked up Cody Bellinger on a 1-year flyer, $20 million deal. And he's been pretty good for the Cubs. He had an injury. He injured himself in Houston, making an unbelievable catch, robbing, I can't remember who it was from of a home run. And so Bellinger is a guy that's definitely on the trading block. A lot of sharks are circling around him. And then in right field, we have Seiya Suzuki. I got to say, a disappointing year again. He's either hot or cold. He's either going to get 3 hits in a walk, or he's going to go 0 for 4. And that's all you have. And I was hoping a little bit more pop. Last year was his first season in the major leagues coming over from Japan. I was hoping for a little bit more pop. Again, you're talking about a corner outfielder, and I don't know if either Suzuki or Happ, either of those guys will get 20 home runs. I'd be surprised. So that's a problem for the Cubs right now. And then Mancini will play first. One kid that you're going to want to watch out for, here's another guy that's hot or cold. He's also homegrown talent, but just kind of exploded on the scene, is Christopher Morel. You were talking about a couple of your pitchers going right at it and throwing fastballs. I would highly recommend not doing that with Christopher Morel. He reminds me a lot of Javi Baez or Alfonso Soriano, if we're going even further back, that if you got a guy that can throw a wicked how do you say it in Boston? Wicked slider? If you got a guy that can throw a wicked slider, Morel will swing at him all day long. But if you make a mistake with that slider, or if you put a fastball, you want to challenge him down the plate, he can put one on the street. So I would just kind of caution on that. And then third base has been an issue. We started with Patrick Wisdom. He's a guy with a lot of pop, but a lot of strikeouts. He's struggled mightily this year. And then we had Nick Madrigal, who was doing much better and actually looking to solidify the position. Not a power hitter like you'd expect, but a guy that gets on base for average. But he hurt his hamstring in the Milwaukee series before the break. And so once that happened, we had a situation where now, who's going to play third? And that's a question. We brought up a kid named Jared Young. He plays first and third, but he started out hot, but the league's figured him out quickly. And then catcher is Yan Gomes, mostly a little bit of Tucker Barnhart and a little bit of Miguel Amaya. But, fans are kind of wanting to see more Amaya.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that you guys are carrying three catchers.
3 catchers, yeah.
And none of them, like, I know sometimes a catcher can move over to first base. None of your guys are able to play first base at all?
They haven't been playing them first. No. So, I'm sure that they can, but they haven't used them for that. Tucker's a little bit older, veteran catcher. And so Tucker has been working a lot with Stroman, but occasionally Gomes will catch him. But yeah, they've been carrying the 3 catchers. I mean, Amaya did so much, but I'm kind of frustrated that he doesn't play more, to be honest.
Yeah. You mentioned about Suzuki, either really hot or really cold. That kind of reminds us of a player on our team last year with Jarren Duran. And, it just took him to work with Pedroia a little bit to figure things out. And we can tell this year it's a world of difference because he was hot, then he was cold, and then the whole world started worrying. Then he started figuring out, making adjustments. That's what a Major League Baseball player does. Makes adjustments when they're in the slump so they can come back out. And then Jarren Duran was hot all over again. So hopefully Suzuki can sit there and make those adjustments because I don't remember, was it last year or 2 years ago when he first debuted?
Yeah, it's last year,
Yeah, he was really hot. And then he got hurt. And then, he hasn't been the same since, really.
Yeah, it's just looking at it right now, man. It's like I said, hot or cold, and it's not bad, but definitely we were hoping for a little bit more this year. He's at 7 home runs right now, so when you're looking at this team, that's the problem that you have with the Cubs is that you don't have a lot of guys that hit home runs, so it's hard to put a crooked number on. So if the balls are not falling in, or if you're playing a really good defense, hard for the Cubs to win. I mean, the Christopher Morel leads the league in leads the team in home runs with 15, and he didn't join the team until like the first week of May.
Wow.
Nobody else is really close.
Right.
Possible trade between the Red Sox and the Cubs. We have a nice little guy down in Worcester. Plays first, third. And he sits there and hits dingers. Bobby Dahlbeck. My opinion, Bobby just needs a change of scenery. And I think he might do decent for you guys over there in Chicago.
Again, any first or third baseman, we have a first baseman right now in Iowa, Matt Mervis. He's a lefty. He had a phenomenal year last year. He went up from high A all the way to triple A, and he had 35, 36 home runs, and every time he went up a level, his strikeout rate went down, and he kept hitting home runs. And we'll go, okay. So he had a little cup of coffee with the Cubs, and it didn't work out that great. But, that's not unusual for a guy to come up and have his struggles at the major league level, go back to AAA and work on some things. So we got some hope there. Third base is just a position right now that I worry about as far as looking in the pipeline and seeing what we got. And I don't know if there's an answer there.
Yeah.
Well, Dahlbeck would certainly fill either one of those slots for you. He's just there's no place for him to play here. He can hit the long ball. And, since being back in AAA, he has. But, the current debate, is he a 4A player or is he, just the potential big leaguer who just needs, as Ritt said, a change of scenery. So I wish him well because he's a good kid. So.
Yeah. So, George, you want to cover our lineup a little bit for us?
Sure. Cora has to do a lot of mixing and matching. Because he's got a lot of the same on the roster. Start with the outfield. He's got Alex Verdugo, who has just turned it on this year. Cora challenged him before the season started and said, "Look, you got to get better. You want to be a player in this league. You got to get better." He stepped it up a couple of times. Cora's made an example of him if he didn't hustle to kind of keep lighting the fire under his backside. He's done that and more. His defense is vastly improved over the last year. He's taken better routes to the ball. He's actually thrown a few runners out that on great plays. He's covering a lot of ground. He's doing what he needs to do. Very clutch with the bat as well. In center field, at the beginning of the year, we had Adam Duvall, who who's playing out of position a little bit. He came up as a corner outfielder, particularly with when he was with the Braves, but he took well to center field. It's wasn't totally strange to him, and is doing really great. He set the world on fire until he broke his wrist in Detroit. So he was gone for a while. They tried a mixed bag of people in center field. That's probably the best way to put it. And then suddenly Jarren Duran came up, and he has been on fire. And he's been aggressive. he has unbelievable speed. If you go to sleep on him on a single to the field and whatever, and you don't pay attention, he's on second base before you can even look as to what happened. And the same goes with a double. He will easily take third base on you. He's a very, very aggressive and fast runner. Defensively, he's improved mightily. You probably saw last year the Romeo Tapia thing, over the head inside the park grand slam that he hit, in Fenway, and Duran just kind of looked back at it. He's playing like a man possessed in the outfield. Made a couple of great catches, good throws. So he's gotten the message. He's made the adjustments, and he's been about as valuable as anybody can be over the last month of the season. In left, we have Yoshida. There was a lot of questions when Yoshida came on board. He came from the Japanese league. How good is he going to be? Well, he's hit 10 home runs, knocked in 40-something runs. He's hitting just 306, I think now. He's done that and more. And the big knock on him when he came up was his defense. And he hasn't played that badly in left field. And particularly when you talk about Fenway Park, as is not the easiest left field in baseball, but he's done a pretty good job. He struggled initially, but then he and the hitting coach kind of figured out he needs to open up his stance a little bit. That made all the difference in the world. He can hit it to all fields. He can hit it with power. His line drives are hard, and they travel very quickly. He gets on the ball with bat speed. The other thing he do is he can dink you, one out in the outfield, just over the infield. He'll hurt you in a number of different ways. They've kind of rotated him around in terms of playing left and being DH. The other thing in the outfield is with Duvall, they need to find a home for him, or they're going to have to move him. That's the current thinking around here. He's a right-handed bat in a left-heavy lineup. And then we have the lefty killer, Rob Refsnyder, in the outfield. The man kills left-handed pitching. Okay, he simply does. He's amazing. Come off the bench and he'll go 2 for 5. And then in the outfield, he's a very good outfielder. The infield, Rafael Devers, what you have there. Okay, they just signed him to a long-term extension. He's got 20 and 70 at the break. Batting average is starting to get up there. For a long time, it was hovering in the 230s. It's up in the 250s now. He's starting to, get the base hits that he was missing the first part of the season. Shortstop, we kind of hinted as to the problems there. Kike has been a major disappointment at shortstop. He can get to the ball, but then, when the ball leaves his hand headed to first base, that I'll say no more. At second base, Arroyo's the starter. He's starting to hit well. Serviceable second baseman. He's okay defensively. He's not going to light up the world, but he'll do what you're supposed to do. And he's a good right-handed bat. Okay, he's not. He can hit, and when he's on a tear, there's nobody hotter. Other disappointment in the infield is Tristan Casas. Came in number 1 prospect last year. Was supposed to be first baseman of the future. He has struggled a little bit better of late. He has the ability to hit the long ball and hit it hard, but his aggressiveness is either it's on or it's off. That's been the key. His play at first base has been suspect. Supposedly he was a good defensive first baseman. I think he's taken, he hasn't taken a couple of good routes to the bag. As sometimes he stays on the bag rather than going out and saving the bad throw, getting off the bag and making it. Justin Turner was hired to be the DH. He's played a lot of first base lately because of Casas' problems. Turner has been everything and more. He's been that veteran that you bring in. He's in his late 30s. He comes in, he settles down the clubhouse, he knows what he's doing, and he made friends in spring training when he took that ball right in the mouth and, came back, 2 weeks later, Ritt, was it?
2 weeks later, threw some dirt on it.
We said that was the thing when we watched it. He goes, just rub some dirt in it, we're back. Turner tough, okay? Been everything and more that you could ask. Defensive, then they have Yu Chang now as the rover defensive replacement, and starting a lot of shortstop these days. Behind the plate, Connor Wong has just blossomed into an everyday catcher, and he can control the running game. You run on him, you do it at your own peril. They suffered a little injury problem, in terms of backup, and it resulted for them reacquiring Alfaro. Aquaman is, you get what you get. The man can hit the cover off of a baseball. Nobody's ever going to confuse him with being a Gold Glove catcher. But I think if Jason Varitek, the catcher whisperer, is in your ear, he's going to do better than what he would have done any other place. So for right now, he's occupying the backup catcher position. As far as the lineup goes, we're hot right now. It's death by 1,000 cuts lately. Nobody. It's not like they're waiting for somebody to go hit a bomb all the time. Single, double. Take the extra base, walk. Somebody will hit a home run. That's been the key to the current run they've been on. They've been extremely patient when they need to be and aggressive when they need to be. So they've been scoring a lot of runs. And if they're on, that's what you're going to see this weekend.
Yeah, that's. I was just gonna say that's kind of the problem with the Cubs is that they're patient, and sometimes teams will take advantage of that, where they will go right at them aggressive, and then now they're down 1-2, 0-2 right away, rather than if there's a I talked to Bobby Dernier years ago, and he told me, I asked him about taking pitches, and he said sometimes the first pitch in at bat is going to be the best pitch you're going to see. Yep. So it's not as simple. People want patient, but go take a look at what batting averages are if you're at 0-2 or 1-2 in this league.
Yeah, it's horrible. I used to despise when, like Mookie Betts would lead off, and he'd take that first pitch, and it's a strike right down the middle, and then next thing you know, like that's the best pitch he gets. Mm-hmm. So if it's there, take it. Don't sit there and worry about we're gonna take the first pitch. I don't know about anybody else. I never want to be down 0-1, especially with the new pitching changes, the new pitching rules. Like all of a sudden you're not looking up at the pitcher, and all of a sudden that could be strike 3 now.
And that's the thing that two guys in particular that I've noticed, Ian Happ and Seiya Suzuki, like they'll sit there and they'll work counts to like 3-2, and then they'll take a ball that it should have been a ball, right? But it's like an inch and a half outside the strike zone, and they get rung up and they get upset. I understand why they're upset, but at the same time, man, it's so close. You're just kind of leaving it to the umpires, and sometimes it's like, look, man, just try to kind of foul it, stay alive. I get it, but until they get that automatic ball strike system going in major leagues, you can't sometimes, if it's that close, you run the chance of being rung up.
Yeah. My kid, when he played baseball, they always told him, protect the plate. If you think it's it could be called a strike, try to foul it off, try to get to it, because you don't want to be sit there and just looking on something that's just outside and let that umpire decide overall, your fate at that at bat.
Yeah.
So let's go bullpen a little bit here. Crawly, hit us up with the Cubs bullpen, because it's changed a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting because what it started out with has really kind of changed. It took a while. So the Cubs got some guys in the offseason, Michael Fulmer, they got Julian Merriweather and stuff like that. And it's taken a while to kind of get that rotation to gel. We still technically don't have a quote unquote closer, even though we do. It really is Adbert Alzolay. Adbert Alzolay is a former starter, and he had some injury problems, but he has been magnificent out of the pen, looking really good. One guy that is interesting to take a look at is Mark Leiter Jr. He's a righty. He throws like a fork ball and all that stuff, but he has there's no lefties, or they still have one lefty, Sam Kay. They called him up, but he's not really good. But Anthony Kay is the lefty, but they started out with no lefties in the bullpen. But when you talk about Leiter, he has real even splits. So something to keep in mind. Julian Merriweather struggled at the beginning of the season, but he's really picked it up. He's the only one that the Cubs have that throws like real gas, like 100 miles per hour. We don't have a lot of those flamethrowers, unfortunately. That's something that is more in the minor leagues. And then, you'll see Michael Rucker and Michael Fulmer. They'll kind of come out. They'll be your like 5-6 inning guys.
Yeah, it's crazy how we're similar in the beginning, except for we actually have a solid closer, and you guys, really don't. But our bullpen completely changed since the beginning of the season also. George, you want to cover it a little bit?
Sure. It's been the major weakness of this team over the last couple of years, the back end of the bullpen. Heimblum fixed that with getting Kenley Jansen as your closer and Chris Martin as your setup guy. There's defined roles. Martin in the 8th, Jansen in the 9th. Okay. And if, Jansen's pitched a couple of days, Martin stepped in a couple of times and done the closing role. The trick for the Sox has been that 7th inning guy. Last year we had John Schreiber. He's due to come back. They've kind of mixed it up a little bit. They have a kid, Joe Jakes, has come in and done it. Bernardino. They've got a mixed bag throughout the year. Long relief, Josh Winkowski has done a very nice job. And the other new face in the bullpen who was in the rotation at the beginning of the year is Nick Pivetta. Pivetta's numbers are incredibly better coming out of the pen, and he has saved them on a number of occasions. He has the ability to go 4 or 5 coming out of the pen. You get down early, he's going to kind of like keep the game under control. And he's gone from like a 5.4 to like 2.8 Ritt, I think it is now, or coming out of the pen. And he griped about it a lot. I'm a starting pitcher. But boy, every time he comes out of the pen, you go, you know what? You're a weapon now. And so he's there. They've been doing a lot with mix and match pieces coming up out of Worcester. At AAA, it's been kind of a revolving door. The few constants of some of the names I mentioned, and that's been about it. I said Schreiber's coming back soon. He will help. He's got a kind of funky delivery that throws batters off. And if he comes back and is effective, he'll be that 7th inning guy, which will kind of narrow up, some of the other responsibilities in the pen. So that's the pen. As I said, we're in pretty good shape in the back end, and if we can hold it together in like 6-7, I like our chances every day.
Yeah, I kind of like our bullpen now better than the beginning of the year.
Yes.
With you always had Martin, you had Jansen in the back, but now we got Wink, we got Pivetta in there. Bernardino's, he's doing really, really well. So we have some key pieces there that can get us, which I think Game 3 might end up being I wouldn't say a bullpen game. It depends what kind of Cutter Crawford we get. But if he can go 4, maybe 4 and 2/3 innings, and hand it over to the bullpen,
I think we're good.
I think we're good. But it also depends really on what they're going to decide for our 4th and 5th starter. There's no way we can go 2 bullpen games every 5 days. That's one of the hardest things for us to sit there and do.
Yeah, Chris Martin was on the Cubs last year, traded him at the deadline to Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
So we know what Chris can do. So good pitcher.
Yeah. So Crawly, any prospects that you want to talk about that we could be seeing for the Cubs this season coming up?
Yeah, the one thing that is exciting about the Cubs is the minor leagues. It keeps looking better. We've had a lot of really good drafts lately. The name that's on everybody's lips, he just went and did the futures game. That's Pete Crow Armstrong. And so Pete Crow Armstrong, we fleeced the Mets on that one. Ended up trading Javi Baez and Trevor Williams to get him. And the Cubs have, like, if you take a look positionally and you name any position, I can tell you an awesome Hall of Fame guy that's been at that position. Center field has been an absolute black hole for the Cubs. They've never been able to get anything homegrown. Pete started last year at the low affiliate. So, I mean, obviously he's a Met draft pick, but he has been absolutely dynamite. The kid right now, if he came up right now, he'd probably be one of the best center fielders in baseball defensively. He is absolutely electric and fast along the base pass. He's ridiculous. They're just kind of working on pit plate discipline is really the last piece that's coming there. So, he's a lefty. He's kind of someone that everybody's looking at. Jordan Wicks was a Cubs first round draft pick. He's exciting. Ben Brown, the Cubs got him for the David Robertson trade from Philadelphia. He's in AAA right now. The Cubs have a lot of outfielders, which, is something we're all kind of looking at as far as, what are we going to do with this? I mean, it's a good problem to have, but Pico Armstrong, Kevin Alcantara is called the Jaguar. He's in the high A. He's a guy that they got for the Anthony Rizzo trade. You also have Alexander Canario, who the Cubs got in the Chris Bryant trade. So there's a lot of talent in outfield. And so the question is, maybe we could trade you guys for that third base prospect you have. But, those are the guys that everyone's looking at. And then, again, who's going to be the next pitcher up? That's going to be the question. We got, like I said, Ben Brown, Jordan Wicks was a draft pick. Hayden Wesniewski was up for a little bit this year. He struggled. He was really good at the end of last year, the last month of the year, but he struggled in the fifth starter spot. So he's back in AAA. Cubs got him from the Yankees in the David Robertson trade. And so that's kind of where, and I mentioned Matt Mervis as the first base prospect that really has a lot of power. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah. George, in the futures game, we had two great middle infielders on that team. You want to cover a couple of our prospects that we've been talking to?
Sure. The first is our number one prospect, who's Marcel Meyer, and I'm very fortunate in that he's at AA. I live just south of Portland, Maine, and the AA affiliate for the Red Sox is in Portland. I did have a chance to see him recently live. Has a presence about him. Obviously, he goes to the futures game and has shoes that have Fenway dirt built into them, on the side. That says a lot about his ability to, be a presence around the mound. Hits with power, hits hard. When he drives the ball, he drives it hard. When he came out of high school a couple of years ago, he was certainly ready to play defensive shortstop. He done nothing to disappoint. Gets to the ball, throws the ball accurately, okay, and just does it smoothly. I mean, nothing flash, does it smoothly and does it right. Okay, combine that. He runs pretty well, and he's a solid hitter at bat. He's probably the best. I lost the. Who's the other kid, Ritt, that was there? Rafaela, yes.
Rafaela,
yeah. Nick York. Now, the Red Sox have had problems up the middle. In Marcelo Meyer at shortstop, they also have a counterpart at second base in Nick York. They're currently playing together in Portland. That is probably a double play combination in the future. And having seen them work together, it should be a very good one. Ceddanne Rafaela has come out of nowhere in the last couple of years. Started as a shortstop, but is a defensive whiz kid in center field. He can get to a ball quickly. Got a strong arm. He's been a little bit hard on himself, but they recently promoted him to AAA. So, depending on what they do in terms of center field and whatever. He's either on the trading block or he's a potential starting center fielder. Maybe depending on what goes on with Duran and everybody else. But definitely they got some studs. Anthony Roman recently promoted up to high A. Shane Drohan, which you've talked to. Yeah, they've got in pitching. The farm system is a lot better. I wrote about it recently, and in 3 years they've gone from being there to being something of value as well. So we've got a lot of prospects that are starting to look good. I would say late 24, 25, 26, there's going to be an awful lot of homegrown talent on the field, which is for any team is that's just the golden key right there. When you can homegrown your talent and you don't have to go out and poach from other rosters or try to do it via free agency, it's cheaper in the long run. And if you do have something, you sign extensions that are very team friendly, and then you can go out and play be a bigger player in the free agent market for things like starting pitching and stuff like that. But yeah, those are probably the best prospects that you could look for, in our system.
Yeah, it's a very exciting future for us, for the Red Sox, and it sounds like it's pretty much it could be the same there, because you guys traded away key players at key points of their career to get a lot of prospects over there for the Cubs.
Yeah, the prospect group that we have is very young, you know what I mean? And they're very talented. Last year, every team other than the AAA team made it to the postseason, and the South Bend Cubs, our high A affiliate, won the championship. So there's definitely a lot of talent there. And the other thing is that there's depth. There's going to be guys that I think that aren't on these lists that are going to break out, that we may not have been someone that was on, Keith Law's list or something like that.
Yeah. So now we're coming to the bread and butter portion. The 3-game series, Crawly. What's it going to end up? Cubs, Red Sox.
Yeah, no, I'm going to be a homer. I'll take the Cubs 2 out of 3, but I mean, I think this is going to be really tough. This is going to be, the Cubs are 5 games under 500, but they are right in it when it comes to they're only 6 games back from the division here. And so they're going to have to do something here. They're going to have to make a run. Now, you guys are the toughest opponent that the Cubs are going to face. So when you talk about buyers or sellers, basically our GM says, well, we're going to wait until the last possible moment to make that decision, because nobody's run away with this division. Is Cincinnati for real? Are they going to keep up this torrid pace in the second half? Don't know. So after you guys are gone, the Cubs face the Nationals at home, the Cardinals, who have been probably one of the most underachieving teams this year for 4 games at home, then the White Sox, who have been another underachieving team, and then 4 games at St. Louis. So other than Boston, there really isn't like teams that are doing really well that the Cubs have to face. So let's say the Cubs take 2 out of 3. There's a potential that they can hopefully go on a roll and be buyers rather than sellers. That's the hope. But right now it's a coin flip.
Yeah. George, what about you?
I see the Sox taking games 1 and 2. I think with Bayo and Paxton back to back. I think Sunday's where we get ourselves in an interesting situation with the Crawford. We get the good Crawford or not, whether or not he just gives us enough and the bullpen comes in and saves the day. The key there is going to be the bats. But I can easily see the Sox taking, 2 out of 3.
And you talk about the bats, and that's the thing that's hurt the Cubs this year has really been the offense. Either they'll sit there and they'll win a game 10-1, and then they'll lose the next 3 games 2-1, 2-1, 2-1. And you're like, and then they'll go win the next game 14-2. It's like the Cubs are the only team in the NL Central with a positive run differential, but it's just a really goofy thing the way that all of their games kind of work out. It's all or nothing, and it comes down to the runners in scoring position. And the Cubs tend to strike out a lot, which is for a team that isn't a power hitting team is bizarre. It's like, okay, you don't hit home runs, but you're striking out too much. And that goes back to what I was talking about sometimes being too patient, not being aggressive. And I think the thing that hurts this team more than anything, the reason they are where they are, they're performing behind their Pythagoras theorem, is clutch, both clutch hitting and clutch pitching. When it comes down to getting the big hit or getting the big out, that's where they struggle. And so, like I said, this team keeps saying we believe we're better than what we performed, and now it's time to put up or shut up because you got 2 weeks to do it.
Is Ross on the hot seat at all?
There's some people unhappy with him, I would say. I think it was, obviously David Ross was a World Series hero, beloved here. And but the thing that frustrated a lot of people is that basically he was handed the keys to the car without ever getting his learner permit, right? He never managed a game. Now, I know, they say catchers are in-game managers, but it's a totally different ball game, man. And so there's sometimes where you take a look and you're like, well, there's mistakes that are sometimes just quickly pointed out. So I think that there's a frustration level, and that's why you never like guys that, were part of the team to ever be a manager, because, they're one day going to get fired. But it was hard because Ross, his first season was the 2020 season, right? Which was COVID, goofy, 60 game. Cubs made the postseason then. Then in 2021 was the sell-off that you were talking about. They sold off Yu Darvish. They sold off Chris Bryant, Rizzo, Baez, Jock Peterson. Anything not nailed to the ground was traded. And so, can you really get mad at him, for 21, 22? And then this year they went out and spent a lot of money. But the results aren't what we feel that they should be right now. And there has been some very critical mistakes that we've seen Russ make.
Okay.
Yeah,
he did get an extension recently, and again, he's a company guy. You know what I mean? He's a guy that, our former coach Joe Madden just wrote a book, and he got himself in a little bit of trouble. But like, if all of a sudden somebody hands David Ross a lineup card, he's not going to say no. I'm not going to do that. Like he's gonna do what the front office wants him to do, which I think is what we're seeing in baseball all around.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to go 2 out of 3 also. These are must wins for us because we have the Cubs, then we have Oakland. We have the Mets, who one day could be good, next day they can be outrageously horrible. We need to sit there and go in those 3 series and win at least 2 out of 3 against you guys, 2 out of 3 against the Mets, and we need to sweep Oakland because then we have the Braves and the Giants before a trade deadline. And those are going to be 2 tough series. The Braves is only a 2-game series, but still, then you got the Giants. So I'm going to go 2 out of 3 because we need it to be buyers. I'm just worried if we're going to be buyers, who we're going to be giving up to get pieces. And that's like my biggest thing.
Okay, so like, I've heard this before in basketball, where they call it basketball hell, where you're good enough to make the postseason, but you're really not truly good enough to win it all. And that's the concern now that baseball's expanded their postseason, is that you can make the playoffs. I mean, it's expanded. You can make it a lot, but that doesn't mean, do I feel that this Cubs team has are we 1 or 2 pieces away from winning the World Series? I don't know about that. Are we 1 or 2 pieces away from making the postseason? Absolutely. Winning the World Series? No. So again, who do you want to give up? And if you really don't have a chance of winning the World Series, like a really solid chance, do you want to do that? The big move the Cubs always made, you guys know, with the Yankees, they traded Gleyber Torres for Aroldis Chapman. And that's exactly how those deals are supposed to work. Chapman helps us win the World Series. The Yankees get a stud, shortstop that's been there for a few years now. That's how you want to do it. But if all of a sudden, you give up a guy like that and you don't win, or you don't even get to the World Series, then it doesn't look like it's as good a move.
Yeah, definitely. Especially like for us, it's, do we want to give up talent to just go to the playoffs? No, that's not the point. The point's to win the whole thing.
Right.
I was talking to George and we did a mid-season award show. If the Red Sox look, we got Chris Sale coming back. We got Schreiber coming back. Trevor Story coming back. Whitlock. So we got 4 pieces coming back after the All-Star break within a couple weeks that those are 4 pieces you don't got to trade for that are holes right now for us.
Right. It's almost like getting guys in a trade.
Exactly. So, but no, Crawly, I really want to thank you for stopping by, coming, talking Cubs. Next year, the season series is out.
In Fenway.
Yeah. I'm definitely gonna be reaching out to you to talk next year also, if it's okay.
Yeah, who knows? I might even be in Boston, so we'll see.
Oh, there you go.
So, it'd be fun to go out there.
Crawly, the floor is yours. Let everybody know where they can hit you up at, where they can listen to you, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Crawly's Cubs. There's no E in that Crawly. So at Crawly's Cubs. You can find our podcast, Fly the W, wherever you get your podcast, wherever you stream them from. We're an Odyssey production, so kind of everywhere. And like, on Facebook and Instagram, Crawly's Clubhouse. So anyone that has questions about the Cubs, man, feel free to jump on in. And I'm always happy to talk and have a good baseball conversation.
Hey, thanks a lot, Crawly, for coming on. We really appreciated it. For my man, George, you had an article come out. You want to tell everybody about your latest article?
Sure. I did a 3-part series on, where I thought Chaim Bloom's head was going to be when it came time to hit the trade deadline. The first 9 games are important. So the last one, I went out and I identified some potential trade targets if they're really serious. They range from decent add-ons to the oh my god trade that includes names like Juan Soto and Shohei Ohtani. But the first 9 games out of the gate here are the most important. And that's why, and I noted it, is that they've got to go 6-3 in those games to be considered relevant in terms of heading to the any kind of postseason move. Less than that, they're going to maybe do some minor things. And if they really play badly, it's a fire sale. So I cover all those things. You can find me on, Pundit of the Pesky Poll on Substack. Also, as part of the Pesky Podcast on the Linktree main page there. And so, it's let the games begin. We hit the countdown, and we finally have baseball back after 4 days. I think we're all kind of like ready for that. So,
yeah. So, well, guys, thanks for sitting there and tuning in to the latest episode. Hit us up on YouTube, follow us so you can watch the live videos of it. We're on all major platforms: Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts. So, but for myself, the Ritt, for George, and for our new friend out there in Chicago, Crawly, thanks for tuning in to the Pesky Podcast.